The sound of my arm snapping echoed through the kitchen like a branch breaking in a storm. I didn't scream. I'd learned not to. Screaming only made things worse. "Look what you made me do." Sarah, my stepmother, hissed, releasing her grip on my now twisted arm. "If you just listened about the dishes." I cradled my arm against my chest, tears silently streaming down my face. The pain was blinding, but the fear was worse. At 16, I'd become an expert at hiding injuries, but there would be no concealing this. The front door opened. Dad was home early. Sarah's face instantly transformed, concern replacing rage. "Oh my God, James," she called out. "Come quick." Maddie fell while mopping the kitchen. My father rushed in, his eyes widening at the sight of my obviously broken arm. "What happened?" he demanded, looking between us. I opened my mouth, but Sarah spoke first. She was being careless with the wet floor. I told her to be careful. Her voice dripped with rehearsed worry. "It was a terrible accident." Dad knelt beside me, his face troubled. "Is that what happened, Maddie?" I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign that he might believe the truth. But I saw what I always saw, willful blindness. He'd chosen Sarah over my safety long ago. She grabbed my arm. I whispered anyway. She twisted until... "Maddie." Dad's voice sharpened. "Don't make up stories. Sarah would never hurt you on purpose." "But..." "She didn't mean it," he insisted, helping me up. "Let's get you to the emergency room." The drive was silent except for Sarah's occasional concerned murmurs and Dad's reassurances that accidents happen. I sat in the back seat, wondering how many more accidents I could survive before one proved fatal. At the hospital, Dad did the talking. My daughter fell while mopping, slipped on the wet floor. The intake nurse eyed my arm, then Sarah's perfectly manicured hands. I saw recognition flicker in her eyes before she nodded professionally. "Dr. Rivera will see you shortly." In the exam room, Dr. Rivera was different from other doctors we'd seen. She asked Sarah and Dad to wait outside, ignoring their protests. "Tell me what really happened," she said once we were alone, her dark eyes kind but intense. "I fell." I repeated the lie automatically. "Maddie," she said softly, "I've been an ER doctor for 15 years. Falls don't cause spiral fractures like this. Someone twisted your arm until it broke." My throat tightened. "You can't prove that." "Let's get some x-rays," she replied, her expression unreadable. "Then we'll talk about proof." The x-rays took longer than usual. Dr. Rivera studied them with growing concern, calling in another doctor for consultation. They spoke in hushed tones, pointing at various spots on the images. When Dr. Rivera returned, her professional demeanor had hardened into something like steel. "Maddie," she began, putting up the x-rays. "Do you see these lighter lines here and here?" She pointed to several spots on the bone. "These are healed fractures, at least 4 of them, in various stages of healing. Some are only a few months old." My heart started racing. No one had ever noticed the old breaks before. "There's more," she continued. "The pattern of these breaks, they're consistent with defensive wounds. Like someone grabbing and twisting your arms repeatedly over time." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Please," I whispered, "if you say anything, she'll..." "She'll what?" Dr. Rivera asked gently. "Hurt you worse." "Maddie, she's already escalating. These breaks are getting more severe. If this continues..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. "Your father," she said carefully, "does he?" "No," I replied quickly. "He just doesn't see it. Doesn't want to see it. He always says she didn't mean it. That I'm clumsy. That I provoke her." Dr. Rivera's jaw tightened. "That makes him complicit," she said. "And legally, I cannot send you back to that house." She reached for the phone on the wall, and I knew with sudden clarity that my life was about to change forever. "Please," I tried one last time. "They'll be so angry." "Listen to me," Dr. Rivera said firmly. "What happens next will be difficult. But if you go back there, I'm looking at x-rays that tell me you might not survive another accident. As your doctor, I'm legally required to report this. But as someone who cares about keeping you alive..." She squeezed my hand. "I'm making this call because I refuse to let them hurt you again." As she dialed Child Protective Services, I heard Sarah's voice in the hallway, still playing the concerned stepmother. But for the first time in 3 years, her act wouldn't be enough to hide the truth. The evidence was there in black and white, written in my bones. The hospital room became a fortress of activity. 2 police officers stationed themselves outside my door while Detective Morgan, a compact woman with steel gray hair, photographed the bruises that mottled my arms. 4 years of this? She asked, documenting a particularly dark handprint on my upper arm. Since Dad married her, I confirmed. It started small. Pinches, slaps. Then it got worse. And your father? I stared at my hospital blanket. He started working longer hours. Said I was being difficult, that I needed to try harder to make things work. Dr. Rivera returned with a child welfare worker named Ms. Torres. Their faces were grim. Your stepmother is demanding to take you home, Ms. Torres said. She's threatening legal action. Of course she is, I muttered. She's always so careful to seem perfect in public. Not careful enough this time, Detective Morgan interjected, reviewing the x-rays. Dr. Rivera, can you walk us through these breaks? The doctor pointed to various shadows on the films. This spiral fracture is today's. Here's a healed break from approximately 3 months ago, another from 6 months back. The pattern suggests systematic abuse, escalating in severity. A commotion erupted in the hallway. Sarah's voice carried through the door, hitting me like ice water. This is ridiculous. I've been nothing but good to that ungrateful child. James, tell them. Let me talk to my daughter. Dad's voice joined in. There's been a misunderstanding. Detective Morgan moved to block the door. Mr. Patterson, your wife is being arrested for child abuse, and you're being charged as an accessory. The silence that followed was deafening. Arrested? Dad's voice cracked. But she didn't mean. Don't, Detective Morgan cut him off. Don't you dare say she didn't mean it. These x-rays show years of intentional abuse. You either knew and did nothing, or you willfully ignored it. Either way, you failed to protect your child. Miss Torres sat beside my bed, speaking softly as the chaos continued outside. We have a foster family ready. They're experienced with trauma cases. You'll be safe there. Foster care. The reality of what was happening finally hit me. But what about school? My things. We'll send officers to collect your belongings, she assured me. And you'll stay in the same school district, but you cannot go back to that house. Through the window in the door, I watched as Sarah was handcuffed. Her perfect mask finally cracked. You little bitch, she screamed. After everything I've done for you. Dad just stood there, looking lost. Maddie, he called out weakly. Tell them the truth. Tell them it was accidents. Dr. Rivera stepped between them and my door. The truth is in her x-rays, Mr. Patterson. Every break, every accident you ignored. It's all documented right here. As they were led away, I heard Sarah start to cry, playing victim to the end. But her tears couldn't erase the evidence of what she'd done to me. Later that night, alone in my hospital room, I finally let myself break down. Ms. Torres found me sobbing. It's okay to feel confused, she said, sitting beside me. They're your family. That's the worst part, I whispered. Dad was supposed to protect me, but he protected her instead. Adults who enable abuse often convince themselves they're keeping the peace, she explained. But peace at the expense of a child's safety isn't peace at all. A police officer entered with a small duffel bag. We collected some of your clothes and personal items, she said. We also found these. She handed me a stack of notebooks, my private journals documenting every accident, every lie, every time Dad chose not to see. These will help build the case, Detective Morgan said, joining us. You've been incredibly brave, Maddie, but I need you to be brave a little longer. Will you testify? I looked at my freshly casted arm, thinking of all the breaks that came before it, of all the times I'd wanted to speak up but couldn't. Yes, I said firmly, I'll testify. Dr. Rivera came in for a final check before her shift ended. The foster family will be here in the morning, she said. They're good people, Maddie, and they won't hurt you. How can you be sure? Because I've worked with them before, she said, and because this time you have all of us watching out for you. As night fell over the hospital, I wrote in a new journal Ms. Torres had given me. Not about breaks or bruises this time, but about hope. About what it felt like to finally be believed. Sarah had broken my bones, but she hadn't broken my spirit. Dad had ignored the truth, but he couldn't ignore it anymore. For the first time in 4 years, I didn't have to pretend. Tomorrow would bring changes, challenges, and probably more tears. But it would also bring something I'd almost forgotten existed, safety. 8 months later, I stood in the courthouse hallway, my new foster mother Karen beside me. The preliminary hearings had been brutal, but today was different. Today was about ending this chapter of my life. Remember, my victim advocate said, you only have to tell the truth. Your x-rays and journals speak volumes. Inside the courtroom, Sarah sat with her lawyer, her perfect mask now cracked and worn after months in custody. Dad sat separately with his own attorney, looking aged and defeated. Neither would meet my eyes. When I took the stand, the prosecutor guided me through my testimony methodically. I described each accident, each cover-up, each time Dad chose willful blindness over my safety. My journals provided dates, details, and patterns that couldn't be explained away. And this final incident, the prosecutor asked, "What happened?" I hadn't dried the dishes to her standards, I said, my voice steady. Sarah grabbed my arm and twisted until it broke. When Dad came home, she said I fell, like always. And your father's response? He said she didn't mean it. That's what he always said. During cross-examination, Sarah's lawyer tried to paint me as a troubled teen making false accusations, but he couldn't explain away the X-rays or the documented pattern of injuries. Dad's lawyer attempted a different approach, claiming he was also a victim of Sarah's manipulation, but the journals detailed every time he'd witnessed the aftermath of her abuse and chosen to look away. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Sarah was sentenced to 12 years for aggravated child abuse. Dad received 5 years for criminal negligence and child endangerment. Both were ordered to pay for my ongoing medical care and therapy. As they were led away, Dad finally looked at me. "Maddie," he called out, "I'm sorry. I should have protected you." "Yes," I replied, my voice breaking slightly. "You should have." Outside the courthouse, Karen hugged me tightly. Over the past months, she and her husband Tom had shown me what a real family looked like. No walking on eggshells, no hidden bruises, no lies about accidents. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I think I will be," I answered truthfully. Dr. Rivera was waiting by her car. She testified as an expert witness and had kept in touch throughout my recovery. "Your latest X-rays show good healing," she said. "But I'm more impressed by your emotional healing." She was right. Through therapy and the support of my foster family, I'd learned that the abuse wasn't my fault, that I deserved to feel safe in my own home. "I've been thinking," I told her. "I want to become a doctor, like you, to help other kids who can't speak up." She smiled. "I think you'd be excellent at it. You already have the most important qualification. You know how to look beyond the surface and see the truth." That evening, Karen and Tom hosted a small celebration dinner. My favorite teachers came, along with Ms. Torres, Detective Morgan, and my victim advocate. People who had believed me, fought for me, and helped me find my voice. "We have something to tell you," Karen said during dessert. "If you're interested, Tom and I would like to adopt you." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. "Adopt me?" "Only if you want to," Tom added quickly. "We know you're 16, and you might prefer to just stay in foster care until college. But we want you to know you have a permanent home with us, if you choose it." Tears welled up in my eyes, happy tears this time. "I'd like that," I whispered. Later in my room, my real room, not the prison it had been in Sarah's house, I wrote in my journal. Not about pain or fear anymore, but about future plans. Medical school. Helping others. Building a life where I was safe and valued. Sarah had tried to break me, one bone at a time. Dad had enabled it through his silence, but they had failed. My broken bones had healed stronger, and so had I. The next morning, I joined Karen for breakfast before school. No tension, no fear, no checking for triggers that might spark violence. Just a normal morning with someone who had chosen to be my mother in all the ways that mattered. "Ready for your biology test?" she asked, passing me the orange juice. "Ready," I confirmed. First step toward medical school. She smiled, and I saw what I'd always wanted from Sarah and Dad: real love, real protection, real support. My arm had long since healed, but the real healing had happened in my heart. The X-rays that had saved me now sat in an evidence locker, proof of what I had survived. But they didn't define me anymore. I was no longer the girl with broken bones and silent screams. I was a future doctor, a daughter by choice rather than birth, and a survivor who had found her voice. And that voice would never be silenced again.